They're, maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes, maybe more, maybe less, but they're specific to a topic. And Susie Barnhill, who's also on this class right now, she's our marketing person here in my office. She's going to have me doing this as quickly as possible. You can do as many of these as you want, and I'm really excited about it. I think you're gonna love it because it's just giving you a lot of information. They're individual topics, so if there's a topic you're not interested in, you can ignore it and just move on to the other one. So I'm very excited about that.
We are too.
Hola, Norma. Okay, so let me show you my screen. This class, this topic is about fix and flips. I got a lot of the N apostrophes in this class today. So here's the thing. Everyone wants to be able to do a fix and flip or know someone that's done a fix and flip, or they've helped a client do a fix and flip. Well, my job in this class is to tell you exactly how people do it, the financing at least, because there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of magic, this smoke and mirrors as to how people can afford to do this. And I just want to cut right to the chase. I always have to tell my family and friends, there's no cheat code in life. There's no way to kind of skip to the front of the line unless you're born with money. That born with money or good genes or things like that. Outside of that, everyone that I know has to work really hard, save their money, and then they reinvest it. And if they reinvest in themselves and the projects that they're working on, it tends to work out. So my hope with this class is to explain to everybody how each individual buyer or rehab or builder can finance their own deals or kind of go this direction. And I shared this with Kendra yesterday. She'll share it with you afterwards. If you want to reach out to me directly, you're welcome to, and I'll send it to you. So here's the myth buster. Despite what many seminars may contend, you cannot expect to buy a fix and flip without using your own money. However, there are many avenues you haven't considered which can make these deals more attainable, including but not limited to. So using other people's money is the dream, right? It's when you have all these investors who believe so highly in you and they have all this liquid cash that they can just say, hey, you go put my money to work and go buy this stuff. It's really not that realistic, at least up front. What typically has to happen is you're going to lean on your own finances, your family and friends, and you're going to do a couple of deals yourself. And you got to start there because any investor that's interested in investing in you is going to want to see some sort of resume. They want to know that you've done this before and that their money is safe, at least safer than just taking a total risk, a total gamble. So that's kind of the thought on this one, at least initially, which is you're me, just an individual, not made of money. Where can I scrape all this cash together to do my own deal? And the easiest answer, the simplest answer in the book is to go get a mortgage. Conventional or FHA loan, they have rehab loans. You can get up to 95% of the purchase price. You can then have money to build as well. These loans are obtained based on your existing debt to income ratio. This is what you see every day at one of your closings, especially in this area. So though investment properties may have slightly higher interest rates than primary residence, rates are so much cheaper than most of the other alternatives to financing, including having partners. I did a investment property yesterday with a mortgage rate of 3.6% on a 30-year. That's crazy. And your fees are pretty limited. You're just paying your origination fee, you're getting an appraisal, you have a credit report fee, all that stuff. They are lending money to you, knowing that this is an investment property. So some of the risks that these loans would require monthly mortgage payments, whether you are making progress or not. That's the big issue, is that, okay, I bought the house, I got a mortgage, I put my 5% down, now I have a mortgage payment. Yes, that is true. And typically, if you close today, September 2nd, your first mortgage payment is not until November. So depending on what your time frame for the construction and doing all the flip is, you could have everything done before your first mortgage payment. And in fact, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, your mortgage payment is not actually late until the 16th of every month. So if you close September 2nd, you don't have an October payment, you have your November payment comes out November 1st, but it's not actually due until November 15th. So you've got almost 2.5 months to get that payment, put it together or sell the house or whatever you need to do. So what you would need to do, call your local mortgage broker, start kicking the tires on what you can reasonably afford and the costs associated with it. This is the no-brainer. Talk to Nick in your office, talk to anybody that you're working with currently and say, hey, what if I find a $150,000 property that needs some lipstick, and maybe needs a new roof, maybe I need to totally rebuild it. What could you lend me? What are your deals? Do you have rehab loans? If you don't do rehab loans, who does? Things like that. So that's step number one. It's the cheapest option, and it's the most available. That's what's on the market, and they're fixed interest rates. You could do something shorter if you know for sure that you're going to just flip it, but you could also give you options to rent it as well. So I really like the conventional loan contingency or the conventional loan or FHA loan scenario, because your other alternatives here are more expensive. So let's kind of go into those next alternatives. So the next best option is seller financing. And this is when a seller says, hey, I'm not getting a whole lot of attention to my property. I'd be willing to give you the money to buy it from me if you put a certain amount down and then pay me a return on my money over the next 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, something like that. Most sellers are not going to take back a 30-year mortgage. It's just not realistic. And even if they say that's what they'll do, I'm not going to recommend it to them. So this applies when the seller is willing to lend the money for the buyer to purchase the property, typically for a short amount of time, less than 36 months. And the reason I say less than 36 months is that there's taxes to the state if you go beyond that 3-year period, and until certain events such as selling the property. Sellers just need to be convinced of your plan and your timeline. They need to believe in you, that you're not a risk to them. At closing, you'd sign a note and a security, just like you would if you were getting a loan from Bank of America. And the sellers, here's the trick, the sellers can't have any mortgages on the property already. We can't basically use the mortgage that's already there to then give the money to the buyer. We have to pay that mortgage off, and then the seller would have to give the money to the buyer to buy them out. So some people who haven't done a seller financing deal, they'll forget that piece. They'll forget that the loan, there cannot be any mortgages on the property for the seller to be able to do that. So what are the risks? You can typically negotiate where there are no monthly payments, at least for a couple of months, maybe more than the typical lender. And so in that case, there's limited foreclosure risk, which I really like. We're taking some risk off the table. We're saying, hey, I don't have to scrunch up the money in order to pay the monthly payment this month. I can buy myself 6 months before my first payment is due, typically. So what would you do next? Ask the seller. So I would be looking at a property that has probably been on the market for a little bit or is overpriced. So if it maybe the house is supposed to, should be worth maybe 180, 170, somewhere in that range, but they have it listed for 200. And it's just been sitting there for a couple months. That's when I reach out to the seller and say, hey, look, I know you're priced a little high. I believe you're priced a little high. You haven't gotten a whole lot of attention on this property. Would you be willing to lend me the money to buy it from you? And we could do it at that high price. And that's kind of you're building in your loan cost right at the price. And the seller's like, well, I can get my price, even if I'm not getting the cash right away, I'll get it over the next several months when they sell the property. Just make sure not to overpay too much. You're getting a loan. You're not getting some sort of grant or a gift. So just be careful. So this may allow you to offer the higher purchase price, and you won't have any additional fees on top of that. It works best when the seller might be asking too much. So I said that earlier. So that's the big one. I like the seller financing. And then the dream If those first two are not scenarios for you, this is when you have all these people coming from out of the woodwork to say, Kendra, you are so darn successful at doing these flips and these rehabs that I want my money to be with you. I want to lend you this money to go do it. And this can include friends and family. So even coworkers or neighbors, the people that already know you, and they're financing your transactions. So instead of giving the seller a note and a security deed, you're getting it from a third party. Here's the thing, on those types of deals, they can also foreclose. They can take it from you if you don't pay them, if you don't follow through on the terms of your loan. So it's not a whole lot different than seller financing, except that it's not the seller doing it, it's some other third party. The risks, the terms of the note and your agreement with the investor is key. Do not lock yourself into unreasonable deadlines and budgets that will force you to lose the property before you're done with it. Also, lenders could also be left with the property as half finished and had no intention of fixing it themselves. So when I look at a deal, when I look at financing options and I look at a buyer, a seller, or maybe a third party in this case, you cannot be so selfish as to assume the other party understands what they're doing. If you're truly going to be a good steward to them and use their money for their benefit and for your own, I think you have to explain the ups and the downs of all these deals. So seller, a third party, you say it's your mom. I think that's probably the best scenario. Mom says, hey, honey, I think you're wildly talented and I would love to invest in you. You've had a great real estate career, even though you've never done a rehab. Here, I have $150,000. I will lend it to you. You just pay me 10% interest, right? It's a good deal. That works. That allows you to go do the property and probably gives you some flexibility. But if you can't finish this project, you are putting your mom's money at risk because you might tear out the walls, you might rip off the roof, and then you're stuck with a half-finished house. And if you just leave it there, you're done. If you got sick, if you had another opportunity and you moved away or something like that, oh, it's just mom's money. That's not how you'll think about it. You'll be sick to your stomach. So if you show that you can be a good steward to this person's investment in you, and that you're not over leveraging, you're not over investing, you're being very considerate and making sure that there's always money in the deal for every party, those third party deals can be pretty stellar, and they're really easy. What you would do in those scenarios is you would basically make a cash offer because your money's already secured. You already know, well, mom's lending me the money or Kendra's lending me the money. We can go do this now. And that leads to the next part of how to finance a deal. And for some reason, this is the way people normally think of what it takes to build and to become a builder or a rehab person. This is how they normally think first. But this isn't the first thing I'm telling you about. This is like the fourth or fifth thing I'm telling you about. So an equity partner, someone who is going to partner with you and they're going to share in the upside and share in the downside. So partner with someone who can teach you the business and invest capital in your transaction is neither a good plan nor easily achievable. I'm trying to make a point. Equity partners are more expensive than lenders. You have to share the profit with them 50-50 or whatever the agreement is. Really, really expensive. I already talked to you about the conventional loan, 3.6% interest rate. If I hold a property for a year, I flip it and then I sell it and I make a 10% return. Well, I don't have to split it 50-50 with the lender. I'm only giving the lender 3.6% and then I get the rest. So in that scenario, that conventional loan, that's the way to go every day of the week, because there are not very many partners that'll put up the majority of the purchase price and only expect 3.6% or 4% or 5% or even 6%. Equity partners are expensive. So there's a natural power struggle. This is the other real problem. When things go wrong and roles are not typically defined well enough to solve these issues. The lender role is very clear. All they do is lend you the money, and if you don't pay them back, they foreclose and take the property. It's it's really simple. They're not making day-to-day decisions. They're not telling you what fixtures to pick out. Maybe they're not also helping. They're not going to be there during the day to make sure that workers show up. I get that. But I could hire someone and pay them hourly to be on site and make sure that everything is progressing if I couldn't be there myself. But I like the lender role where it's like, just give me your money and go away. I'll pay you later. That's my preference. If you have a partner, this partner may want to be at the house every day. They may want to go with you to Floor and Decor. They may want to show up at the closing table with you or help negotiate the contract. And that's really hard to get stuff done if 2 people, 3 people, 4 people have to decide together. There are ways to do it, and I can certainly help you with defining an operating agreement or partnership agreement that I found works the best, but I still don't like it. And here's the example. You've got, let's say, real estate agent X. She has been a real estate agent for 10 years. She's owned a house for most of her adult life. She's married and she has kids, and over those years she's fixed the flooring. She's hired someone to replace the deck. She's had the house painted, all those things, right? And she's been able to figure that out at her own house. Well, how is a rehab a whole lot different? Yes, there might be more projects and you might want to make them go a lot faster. And it's not your primary house. It's like another house that you have to deal with, but it's really not a whole lot different. You're going to interview contractors. You're going to figure out the work. You're going to negotiate on pricing, and then you're going to hire them. And you're going to make sure they did what they did, and then you're going to pay them. That's awesome. I would empower each and every one of you to feel confident enough to do a rehab if you have that other experience. If you don't mind negotiating with contractors, not that you don't mind it, but that you're comfortable doing it, that you understand the risks, that you understand how to kind of keep a project moving along. I look at my wife, and she doesn't know anything about real estate, but she certainly knows a lot about hiring people and being a good judge of character. If the HVAC is broken, we need a new system. She knows how to call around and get quotes, and compare them to each other and get the best price she can. I don't need someone with 30 years experience to be able to call an HVAC specialist. I don't want that. That's too expensive. So if there's someone, say you're on one of these real estate seminars, or you are online and you're just discussing real estate on a Reddit thread or whatever it may be, on Facebook, lean into those people that you trust, that you have a rapport with, and even pay them hourly. Say, hey, what would it cost for you to come to the site? Give me some suggestions. Give me your referrals. What would you charge me to do that? As opposed to saying, hey, partner with me. I'll fund the money and you teach me. I don't do that. That doesn't work for me. I don't want equity partners. I think they're too expensive. I'd rather just pay them hourly. If it's an extra $1,000, it's going to be a lot cheaper than if you had them as an equity partner. The other thing, and this is in the risk section, equity partners add a new risk profile to a deal, as you now have to account for a new decision maker. Groupthink may start to slow you down. You may forfeit your responsibility to someone who isn't yet capable to handle it without you. So there are a lot of risks with someone else. I had a deal where these clients, these 2 parties had come into a partnership. One guy had the money, the other guy had the experience. And the money guy, he paid in and he wanted to be a real estate guy, but he had a full-time job. He was elsewhere most of the time. And then when he came back like 2 months later, he was traveling and all this, the project was a mess. Work had been paid for and not completed. The partner who was on boots on the ground was working on other deals. He didn't have his full attention. It was really bad. And as opposed to if this guy had simply just bought this house himself and then used him as a consultant, it would have saved him a lot of money, saved him a lot of headache. They wouldn't have been in this massive lawsuit that they ended up in. Equity partners are a disaster a lot of the time. Now, if you partner with someone, partner up. Just like the person you marry, the person you date, you want them to make you better. You want them to be different. You want them to just kind of make everything come together. If you find someone like that that can think a couple steps ahead of you, or is working in a totally different section, like doing all the bookkeeping, and they're so good that they add a lot of value to you, then yeah, partner with them. But don't do it just for the money. Don't do it just because they're going to cut in half with the money. I'd rather you get a loan. I'd rather you get a mortgage. So what to do next? Rent before you buy, meaning that you have an interested partner lend you the money on 1 or 2 deals before becoming partners. There are ways to test each other out. That you lend on their deal, they lend on yours. You know, if you reach out to someone that you know does real estate deals and you say, hey, look, on the next property you do, I'd like to invest. I have $20,000. I'll be an equity partner. I won't have a decision. I'll just be a silent partner. And I just want to be able to be abreast of all the things you're doing. I want to be able to see it. I want to be able to audit it. And then the next time, maybe you invest $50,000. After that, maybe you're 50-50 partners. Or maybe you end up doing it yourself because, yeah, there's not a whole lot of magic there. Maybe I can do that myself. And then if you do that, if you do end up partnering with them, you have a very deliberate partnership agreement with that individual that shows how we're going to pay invoices, who's going to be the decision maker, and how we're going to sell the property. All right, so I think you kind of got the feeling of how I feel about equity partners. Do it yourself if you can. Hard money lenders. I hope everyone has at least heard that term. You may not have ever had a deal with it, but a hard money lender is a hybrid between a private lender, so a person, and an institutional lender. They're usually a company that's set up to lend money for things like a rehab. They're specifically for this, and they are designed to be less strict than a conventional lender, like a Bank of America, but more formal and more available with better funding than maybe an individual would be. I used to develop subdivisions and other commercial properties, and the problem that I had with how we financed some of our deals was I was leaning on doctors and dentists and business owners who have a full-time job. So if I found a great property on a Monday, I had to pitch it to them on a Tuesday, and maybe they're working. Maybe they don't want to jump on a conference call. Maybe they took the week off and went on vacation. So that doctor who said they would invest in me, they're not available. They're not that flexible. This is an investment to them. It's not their business. So hard money lenders can be great for that reason. There are a lot of them out there. You can ask your colleagues. You can reach out to me. If I've worked with any recently, none that are particularly great. I think they charge a lot. Their interest rate is high, but they're quick. And they're always available to lend you money if you have a good deal. You got to put together a business plan. You got to put together, they'll probably want to do an appraisal. They're going to make you to guarantee the money personally, but it's a good option. I do like it. There is foreclosure risk, just like any other financing deal. And you must really pay attention to the fees. That's a big one. All right, now we're going to dig into some different types of financing, something that you may not have ever even thought about. So if you have an IRA, a retirement account, typically your company or you'll set this up through Vanguard or Fidelity, one of these big brokerage firms, and you'll invest in stocks and bonds, maybe some options or something like that. And it's just supposed to sit there and grow over time. Well, a self-directed IRA is allowing you to take all that money, and instead of being held by Vanguard, they would move that over to an IRA company that specifically allows you to invest in real estate or businesses. So you take your traditional IRA or your Roth IRA, you convert it into a self-directed IRA. There are companies here in Atlanta that do it. They're basically accounting firms. And you can then buy real estate using the IRA money. You're not liquidating, I suppose you're liquidating any stocks and bonds. So you are doing that. You're getting cash, but you're not distributing it to yourself. So there's no fee, there's no penalty to the IRS for taking this money out of your IRA because it's staying in the IRA. Stays in the IRA, it's just instead of buying an Apple stock or an Amazon stock, you're investing in real estate. So if you own property, it would be, the title, the deed, which say that the owner is the Christian Ross IRA. Now, it wouldn't say something else. It would say Christian Ross IRA. Or if you were buying into an LLC that owns property, the owner of the shares would be Christian Ross IRA and not me personally. And then when you sell, that money would go back into the IRA brokerage. It wouldn't go into your personal account because it's not personally yours yet. It's being held separately by a third party. So in that scenario, there are no taxes when you sell. Even if you made $100 million in profit, which would be amazing, there's no taxes until you actually get a distribution. And I think currently it's 59.5. So if you have $50,000 in a traditional IRA and you're investing in stocks or bonds that you don't necessarily understand, this is an option. Now, I'm not promoting that you do this necessarily because this may not be the right option for you. It may be safer for you to be in bonds or stocks. But if you're trying to get a deal together that could make you a lot of money and secure your retirement a little bit better, I like this option. There are fees associated with hiring the intermediary because you're basically paying a consultant to set this all up for you. Maybe $1,000, $2,000, something like that, just to set it all up. You'll have to establish LLCs and operating agreements to show that the IRA is owning these properties. But it's an incredible opportunity to access cash you otherwise have invested in stocks and bonds or annuities. So talk about the risks. Though this money is not, has no requirements, So though it doesn't have requirements on being paid back, it is your retirement we are accessing. So if the deal goes sour, you could lose a significant portion of your wealth and your safety in retirement. So that's why I don't want to kind of avoid that part of it, that we are playing with real money here, that your spouse may believe is safely in stocks, bonds, or index funds. I think you need to be very careful before pulling the trigger. But if you're good at this, if you've explored the conventional loan option and that's not a good option for you, I like this option. It's money that you already have, and you could have a couple $100,000 in an IRA. It could be a couple $1 million in an IRA. And I would just say start small. Still go with that, dip your toe into the water. Don't go crazy. Don't over leverage yourself. Be very careful about how you do this. So what you would do next, contact a self-directed IRA intermediary and start educating yourself on the details, such as the fees, what the rules are, and what it all entails. But ultimately, that leads us, we're going to skip lines of credit. We'll come back to it. Let's go to 1031. This is the one that most people are aware of, but not everybody even knows exists. So 1031 is kind of like the stepsister of the self-directed IRA. It is taking advantage of the tax code to avoid taxes, at least at the moment. So when we look at the self-directed IRA, you sell a property and you make a lot in profit, maybe make $100,000. Normally, that $100,000 is taxable. Hopefully it's long-term capital gains, but it could be short-term capital gains for anything less than a year. So you would pay taxes. Maybe it's 20%. So you'd have a $20,000 tax bill at the end of the year when you account for the profit you made on selling this property. So if we look at instead of you owning that individually, you own it through your IRA, that full 100,000, it's not taxable today. Maybe it will be later. When you retire, when you actually take a disbursement from your IRA, and you use that to fund your lifestyle, but it's not taxable at the moment. So I'm 34. If I had a deal like this today, I could sell I'd make $100,000 in profit, and I would just put it back into my IRA, and I can use it on another deal. I could then invest in stocks and bonds. I could do whatever I needed, as long as I don't distribute it to myself. I'd have the full 100,000 to turn around and buy something else. There's no taxes that you would otherwise owe. If you didn't do an IRA and you hold it individually, the other option to defer taxes is your 1031. So this is named for the Internal Revenue Code. The IRS uses the Internal Revenue Code. It's statute-based. It's section 1031. And you may be permitted to convert an existing asset into a new purchase without incurring capital gains tax bill. So this is a bit different than self-directed, but the end result is the same. At the end of the day, you're trying to avoid having to pay taxes today and just keep that $100,000 intact without having to pay your tax bill. So the trick is you have to replace that property. So you owned one investment property, you fix it up, you flipped it, you sell. Within 6 months, you have to buy another. That's tough. Also, I think within the first 60 days, you have to identify what property you're going to buy. It's called a replacement property. So you sell on January 1, sometime before the end of February, you identify at least 3 properties that you're considering replacing this one with. And then by June, the 6-month period, you have to actually close on one of those 3. And if you do that, if you sell, identify a property within 2 months, and then close on it within the 6 months, you can move that full $100,000 into the next property without any gain. Basically it's a replacement property, a deferred tax exchange. You're exchanging one property for another. It's awesome. And it's typically the way real estate companies, real estate investors will be able to defer taxes. And so what they might do is they would buy a piece of property, fix it up, hold it for 2 years, because that's one of the requirements for this 1031. You have to hold it for at least 2 years. So they might fix it up, rent it, get it generating some sort of cash flow. They would then refinance this deal, take money out of it, which is not taxable, by the way. You would just be paying on your mortgage payment. And then sometime after 2 years, they sell it and do it again. So you buy a $100,000 property, you sell it for $150,000 2 years later. And then you take that $150,000, you buy a $150,000 property, you fix it up again, you sell it for $250,000. You hold that for 2 years. Then you take that $250,000 property, maybe you sell it, you sell it again, you buy something that's $350,000, and you reinvest, and you're using loans, using leverage, and all the while you're not paying any taxes, except when the music stops and you don't buy another property, you pay taxes then. By that time, you hopefully have generated enough assets and enough income off of those assets that you're not going to have to let the music stop, that you'll just perpetually allow that to gain value, gain value, gain value. And then you may want to talk to your estate planner about, inheriting money or kind of lending it down to the next generation. So definitely a really interesting topic, but there's, be careful, because you have to be good at the real estate part to make any money in this deal. So if the money it comes in easy, just be very careful, because it has very real consequences. And let's look at the last option, the line of credit. So a home equity line. This is probably the next best option to getting a new mortgage. So let's say you own your house outright, or you have a lot of equity in your house. It's $1 million house, and you've got $400,000 in equity in it, and then you have a mortgage for the rest. Call your local banker, ask about doing a home equity line, and just how much of that money you can take out. Maybe it's $200,000. Maybe someone will give you a $200,000 line of credit, and you set it up now. It's a variable interest rate, but if you don't pull anything, you don't owe anything. And it's just a line of credit. You can pull from it anytime you need for any purpose, including rehabbing properties, buying investment properties. And the nice thing about doing this is that you can make cash offers. So I want to buy Kendra's house. I have a $200,000 line of credit. I'm going to offer $200,000 cash. And I don't have to apply for a new mortgage. I don't have to wait. I just draw from my home equity line and close. And it's really quick, assuming you have it all set up already. So if, say, sometime in the next year or two, you think you might be able to do one of these deals and you want to keep your options open, or you want to be able to invest in family or in your own business, or hire someone or whatever it is, and you need some sort of line of credit, home equity line is awesome. It is variable interest rate. It's interest only payments though. So even if your home equity line is like a 5% interest rate, if you're going to take out $100,000, your payment, that full $100,000 is $5,000 a year in interest. And you don't have to pay down principal. Not yet, at least. They give you maybe 10 years before you have to start paying down on principal. So really cool option. So the foreclosure risk is applicable, but not really, because it's your principal home and it's not foreclosing on the investment. You'd be foreclosing on your property. Failure to pay could have disastrous effects on your credit and results in liens that would attach to the property. Obviously, you need to pay your mortgage. Home equity line is no different than a mortgage. So most HELOCs are available only through your existing bank where you're a client. So call there first. If you call, a Silverton loan officer, they're not going to be able to do it most of the time. You're going to have better luck and better pricing just working through your bank. So you call the bank, you apply for a home equity line, you see what the terms are, you see what the costs are. I know typically home equity lines, you're not going to pay anything for them. They say, I think the costs are like $800 or $1,000, but you don't have to pay that back if you keep the home equity line open for more than a couple of years. So you'll obviously read the fine print and shop it around if you can, but they're usually really, really effective ways of kind of tapping equity in property you already own. You can't do a home equity line for investment properties typically, but if it's your principal residence, you can do the home equity line and then use that money to buy or rehab investment properties. So these are our options for financing fix and flips. I would love to see if other people are kind of doing the same thing. If they see something else, I'll happily update this, but we've got the conventional loans or FHA. You're probably not going to see a VA loan because the VA buyer only has one use of that. The seller financing or private financing, kind of the same thing, just different types of people. The equity partners, which you may have come into this thinking that's the way to go. Hopefully I convinced you it may not be. Hard money lenders, self-directed IRAs, which I love, the home equity line on an existing property, and then 1031 exchange. So a lot of fun options, and hopefully that's gives you the examples that you need. Sorry for not sharing my screen the whole time. It looks like it paused, but
I emailed everybody on the list the printout, so hopefully they saw it.
Awesome. We've got 14 people. I didn't know if anyone wanted to talk or ask any questions about those now that we've kind of been able to go through all of them.
Okay.
Norma, you've had some clients do investment properties. Do you remember what they've usually used? Let's see if I can
Unmute her.
I can't seem to unmute her. Oh, weird. Susie, how about you? Let's see. Susie, you have to talk. Susie owns a couple of properties, and I think most recently we tapped into a home equity line, I believe, and allowed her to buy it cash. So, and then you got to figure out your refinancing after the fact. You can also, the one thing we didn't talk about, I suppose, was you could borrow from your brokerage account. There is a payback timeline before you would have to pay fees on that, and that it's no different than tapping into your IRA. You're basically taking the loan off of your stocks and bonds. There are problems with it. I don't think the fees are all that bad unless your stock portfolio were to go down, you might have a margin call. So a lot of options, but I kind of wanted to debunk some of the myths about where people get their money from. Some of the big builders in East Cobb, they tap their IRAs. It sounds weird, but that's what they'll do. And then the other builders just borrow. They borrow from traditional lenders. So you can go the traditional lender route, and when you start really building a resume, the lenders will be more and more interested in your business.
Yeah, the IRA one sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is
Heard of it, but
interesting.
Yeah,
Well, and
I've
when
heard of
you
it, but I've never
consider-
really like looked into it at all. So
Well, I think Kendra, you and I probably are thinking about it the same way, where it's like, I never even thought about using that money, and all of a sudden I have this untapped pool of money that I could do.
Yeah.
I could do this, and if you feel like you're good at this real estate, that you found a good property out on, like, say, a caravan or something. You found something that's a great deal, and no one's paying attention to it, and instead of sharing it with one of my clients so that they can make money on it, why don't I try and do it?
Mhm.
Having that, the IRA, maybe it's $250,000 that you have in there, and you could tap 150 of it for the purchase, and then you have another 50 for the rehab, and then you still have some cushion there.
Yeah.
All right, so Michael has a question. Do you have any companies that you can recommend to set up a self-directed IRA? I do, Michael, I do. Let me see what it's called. I think it's called Advantage IRA. So let me see if I can find it. IRAadvantage.net. IRAadvantage.net. Let's see if I can share my screen with you. So there's a little bit of marketing here, but they've got, there you are, Michael, sitting on the beach, holding your wife's hand. That was perfect. Self-directed IRA experts, your retirement your way. Go confidently forward in the pursuit of your dreams. Live the life you've imagined. It's a good company. A lot of my clients use this. I don't know anyone there personally, and I don't have any sort of affiliation with them, but they've got a lot of good information on this. There's also, I think it looks like one of their affiliates is a company called Post 1031. And this would be a company that you would use to kind of guide you in the 1031 space. So that should, looks like find your 1031 exchange property. So this is where you can find 1031 exchanges. The other way you can do it, you can try and raise capital through some of these, I think what are they called? They're platforms where you can have investors invest in you and your projects, but you got to have a resume to be able to do that stuff. You got to have a good 10, 20 deals under your belt. And sometimes even then, the deals are not, they have to be a good deal individually.
I put that website in the chat too, so they can see it.
Oh yeah, Norma says you can use cash. That's probably the obvious one that I didn't reference in my talk, is you can use cash. Absolutely. I think that would be the easiest, because if the money's sitting there, you're paying yourself.
Yeah.
Let's see, this might be another question. Nope.
Just a thank you, I think.
Cool. Very cool. All right, let's see, there's another. All right, guys. Well, I hope that was helpful, and feel free to reach out to me, and I can answer any other questions you have. I do a lot of these deals. Here at the Campbell Brandon offices, sometimes they call me the Craigslist lawyer, because I'll do anything. It doesn't matter to me. So feel free to reach out to your local Craigslist lawyer, and I'd be happy to help you.
Yay!
Yay.
And what's next week's topic? We're gonna have it again next Wednesday. I don't have the list in front of me.
All right, I've got a list. Give me 1 second. I'll give you the topic for next week.
I'd let them know.
And I might switch it around, Kendra, but.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. We've got our agent success plan for KV Core up at 11. So if you